for September 9th, 2024. If you'll please call the roll.
Good evening. Member Borja? Here. Devlin?
Here.
And Rathel?
Here.
And you have a quorum.
If you'll please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if you'll please make the announcements for this evening.
The county fosters public engagement during the meeting and encourages public participation, civility, and use of courteous language. The commission does not condone the use of profanity, vulgar language, gestures, or other inappropriate behavior, including personal attacks or threats directed towards any meeting participant. To make an in-person public comment, please complete and submit a speaker request form to the clerk's staff. Each individual will be invited to the podium to make a comment. Members of the public may send written comments, which are distributed to the commission members and filed in the record. Please email comments to boardclerk@saccounty.gov or mail to 700 H Street, Suite 2450, Sacramento, California. And that concludes the clerk's announcement.
That moves us to the contested portion of our agenda. Please call item number 1.
Item number 1, this is a general plan amendment, community plan amendment, rezone, and conditional use permit. It is located at 6350 Bradshaw Road at the northeast corner of the intersection of Bradshaw Road and Elder Creek Road in the Vineyard community, and the environmental document is a negative declaration. Oh. I think they were testing it earlier.
All right. Good evening, Commissioners. Chair Rathel. My name is Emma Carrico. I'm an associate planner and the project manager for the Bradshaw at Elder Creek Trucking Rezone project. The project site is a 6.6 acre parcel located on the northwest corner of the intersection of Bradshaw and Elder Creek Roads in the Vineyard community. The site is currently developed as a heavy equipment storage yard. The subject parcel is currently zoned interim agricultural reserve and surface mining. Surrounding land uses include a construction storage yard to the north, an undeveloped parcel to the south, agriculture, specifically a strawberry farm, to the east, and single-family residential to the west. The site is located within the pending West Jackson Highway Master Plan area, specifically within Future Planning Area B, where acreages of each land use designation have been allocated but not geographically cited. We will discuss the West Jackson Highway Master Plan in greater detail later in our agenda, tonight actually, but I will note that the master plan remains in process and is not planned to go to hearing for consideration of adoption until sometime in 2025. Because this application was deemed complete prior to the final hearing for the master plan, this project is not required to comply with the policies of the master plan at this time. If the master plan is adopted, any future development on the subject parcel will be required to comply. A use permit and design review to allow the existing heavy equipment storage yard were approved on October 28, 2019 by the Planning Commission. The use permit limited the operation to storage of heavy equipment and tractor trailers used in conjunction with construction only. The applicant has operated the heavy equipment storage yard since site improvements were completed in early 2020. However, the applicant stated that the demand for construction storage rental facilities has not been sufficient to maintain the business. Because of the limitations of the existing use permit, the applicant is requesting several new entitlements that would allow the operation to include storage of trucks and large vehicles not related to construction uses. I'll go over each of these entitlements shown here specifically in the next couple slides. Not only is general storage of trucks and large vehicles not allowed under the existing use permit, it is also not a permitted use in the parcel's current agricultural urban reserve general plan land use designation and interim agricultural reserve community plan and zoning designations. As such, the applicant is requesting a general plan amendment to convert the parcel from the agricultural urban reserve and aggregate resource area land use designation to the commercial and offices land use designation as shown on this slide. The applicant is also requesting a community plan amendment from the industrial reserve / surface mining designation to the general commercial designation and a rezone from the current interim agricultural reserve and surface mining zoning district to the general commercial zoning district. Additionally, a use permit is required in the general commercial zoning district to allow a truck and large vehicle storage facility. As previously mentioned, the subject parcel is already developed with improvements for the heavy equipment storage facility. No physical changes to the site are proposed or necessary to serve the proposed use with this application. Existing improvements include driveway access from Elder Creek Road here with a motorized gate, frontage improvements, screening fencing, and landscaping, which includes shrubbery and screening trees in front of the screening fencing, as well as on the eastern property line to separate the adjacent single-family residential use. Over here. An initial study that analyzed potential impacts of the proposed project was prepared and released for public review on August 9th, 2024. The study determined that the project would not result in any significant impacts. As such, a negative declaration was prepared, concluding that the project would not have a significant effect on the environment. To date, the county has received one comment letter on the negative declaration from the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board. The Water Quality Control Board's letter did not comment on the accuracy of the declaration, but instead focused on the potential need for the applicants to acquire separate permits. Because the comments are not related to the environmental document's adequacy, the county has noted but not responded to the comments. The Vineyard Community Planning Advisory Council met on April 11th, 2024 to consider the project. No vote was taken due to a lack of quorum. However, council members generally expressed their support for the project. The Design Review Administrator found that the project meets the requirements of Zoning Code Section 632C and waived the requirement for design review. Therefore, the project was not presented to the Design Review Advisory Committee. At this time, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve Resolution 1, which recommends the board approve the amendment to the general plan to change the land use designation from agricultural urban reserve, aggregate resource area, to commercial and offices. The final hearing authority for this project is the Board of Supervisors, so staff also recommends the Planning Commission make the following recommendations to the board. Determine that the environmental analysis prepared pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act is adequate and complete. Approve Resolution 2, authorizing an amendment to the Vineyard Community Plan to change the Vineyard Community Plan land use designation from industrial reserve to /surface mining combining zone to general commercial. Adopt an ordinance authorizing a rezone from interim agricultural reserve /surface mining combining zone to general commercial. And approve the use permit subject to findings and conditions. That concludes my presentation. Staff is happy to take any questions the commission may have. The applicant is also present. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carrico. Questions for staff this evening? Commissioner Borja?
Thank you for the presentation. Would this supersede the current use that's already being in the
Good
parcel for
question.
now?
Yeah, good question. So basically, yes, it would be a whole new use under a whole new use permit. They are kind of similar uses, which is why no physical changes to the site are needed, but the zoning code does distinguish between the two land uses due to some operational differences, and so that's why the need for new use permit.
Thank you. Given the changing nature of how this business could potentially be, with the changes and the types of internal combustion engines or the farming community changing, might there have been a pathway in which the applicant could have created like a hybrid version where their use would have allowed for both? I'm just trying to see if there's a way that we could assist the applicant should the economics may change so that they may not have to come back here in the future, and give them the flexibility.
Yeah, understood. So the new use, the truck and heavy equipment general storage, will encompass essentially the existing use. So they will still be able to store most of the heavy equipment that's currently allowed under their use permit, but it will kind of allow them to expand into allowing the storage of trucks that aren't specifically construction related. So if they were to find that, semi-truck parking was not as desirable anymore and they needed to go back to more construction related storage, that would be feasible under the new use permit as well.
Okay. And they wouldn't have to go back to a different
Correct.
format.
They would not need any further entitlements.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for staff? All right. Thank you, Ms. Carrico. At this time, I'd like to invite the applicant up to address the commission.
I do have to give him an oath, so.
We'll get you sworn in here in just a second. If if we have multiple folks that may be answering questions, we'll get you all sworn in at the same time.
If you wish to address the commission about items 1 and 2 on the agenda, please stand and be sworn. Please raise your right hand, and the appropriate response is I do. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, so help you God? If you do not swear, do you so affirm?
I do.
When you go to the podium, please state your name for the record and the statement, I have been sworn. Thank you.
My name is Jeff Leonard. I'm here representing the applicant. I'd like to thank staff for their presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any. The applicant does accept the conditions of approval as written.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant this evening? All right. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Chair Rathel, excuse me, I do have one, sorry, I'm a Carrico Associate Planner. I do have one clarification on my previous answer. So the heavy equipment portion of the existing use permit, so non-vehicular equipment, would not be allowed under the new use permit, but other vehicles, minor vehicles associated with trucking storage would be allowed. So some elements of the current use permit would be allowed, not specifically the construction equipment. Apologies for the confusion.
Maybe a question for the applicant, Chair.
Sure, if you'd like.
That's acceptable.
Okay? Well, I was going to ask I guess the opposite. I mean, is that something that the business may necessitate in the future? I think that's where my colleague was potentially going. And so, if that's something that may be of need, we should maybe understand that now, so we're not coming back here in the future.
I'm going to defer to Jim on that one.
Before you speak on this issue, Emma Patton, Senior Planner, one thing I do want to note, just to add to Emma Carrico's statement, is that in the LC zoning district, or in the GC zoning district, where we're rezoning now to from the existing zone to this GC zoning district, the use that is being described, the heavy equipment parking, isn't allowed in that zoning district, whereas it was allowed with a use permit with the previous industrial reserve or industrial agricultural reserve zoning district. So that's part of the issue here.
So we don't have a mechanism of
Correct. So there's no mechanism of allowing the heavy equipment parking in the GC zoning district.
And that was our understanding as well. Jim Gillum, I have been sworn. And we appreciate the desire to help us maintain maximum flexibility. Unfortunately, the heavy equipment storage just wasn't a use that was in demand in this location. So my client does want to move forward with the rezone, and he has had a lot of interest from people that want to store their trucks. I'll also note that when we were at the CPAC, one of the CPAC members noted that in their neighborhood they were having challenges with people parking their commercial vehicles illegally within the neighborhood, and they welcomed this opportunity for people to have a place to rent a spot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any public comment this evening?
We do not have any speaker slips for this item.
All right. We're going to go ahead and close public comment, and we'll move on to deliberation.
I'd be happy to move the staff recommendation.
That's good. We got a motion for staff recommendation,
I would go ahead and second that.
and we have a second.
I just want to, for the record, sir, I didn't meet with the applicants and definitely do agree with the CPAC members that mentioned that there's a number of, for lack of a better term, smaller business family owned trucking and freight that tend to use some of our unused spaces and parks. And so hopefully having a location that is close by to those neighborhoods can eventually alleviate ourselves from those parks parking overnight and still be safe and close enough for those community members, and hopefully one less thing for the parking enforcement folks to have to visit, because my neighborhood and Vineyard tend to call the parking department often for that issue. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Please call the roll.
Oh, you can vote on your
Oh,
panels,
perfect.
please. Thank you. And it's unanimous vote with those members present.
Thank you so much. That concludes item number 1 this evening. And I would please call item number 2.
Item number 2, this also requires an oath. This is the general plan amendment, community plan amendment, rezone, use permit, special development permit, and design review for a project located at the southwest corner of Verner Avenue and Garfield Avenue in the Carmichael Old Foothill Farms community. And the environmental document is a mitigated negative declaration.
All right. Good evening, Commissioners and Chair Rathel. My name is Kimber Gutierrez. I'm a senior planner with Planning and Environmental Review, and I'll be presenting the Blue Oak Car Wash project for you all tonight. The clicker's All right. The subject parcel is approximately a ½ acre in size and is located at the southwest corner of the Garfield Avenue and Verner Avenue intersection in the Carmichael Old Foothill Farms community. The parcel is undeveloped, and there appears to have been some site disturbance in 2003. However, there is no evidence of buildings or structures ever being erected on the site. The subject parcel, I just wanted to touch on some existing topography of the site. So the parcel does slope from an elevation of approximately 138 feet from the southwest corner adjacent to Garfield Avenue to approximately 126 feet to the east corner adjacent to Verner Avenue. So in addition to that topography, there are no public street frontage improvements, and the site does support 21 trees and annual grasses. Of the 21 trees on the site, 20 are protected native oak species. I know this aerial is a little bit zoomed in, but immediately surrounding land uses include a daycare facility adjacent to the southwest on Garfield Avenue, which is indicated on this plan, undeveloped vacant property to the south, a place of worship across Verner Avenue to the east, and a movie theater across Garfield Avenue to the north. You're able to kind of see most of those uses on these 3 maps, which depict the subject parcel and the surrounding areas' land use designations and zoning. So as you can see, there are predominantly residential designations in the immediately surrounding area, with the subject site being zoned RD2, which is residential density 2 dwelling units per acre. So that's the far right image. It's also designated RD2 on the community plan, which is the middle image. And then it's designated low-density residential on the general plan, which is the far left image. As described in the last slide, the existing surrounding land uses consist of mainly institutional and commercial uses, although the land use designations and zoning are all residential. The sole commercial designated property and commercial land use in the immediately surrounding area is that movie theater across Garfield Avenue to the north. There is also some commercial designated property on the north side of the place of worship, which includes some small retail centers. The current parcel configuration was created through a parcel map in 1978. And one important thing to note there is that that included a no ingress or egress rights along Garfield Avenue. So that means sole access from Verner Avenue. No other prior planning entitlements have been obtained for the subject site, and there are also no active code enforcement violations for the site as well. So the applicant is requesting a general plan amendment, community plan amendment, and rezone. The general plan amendment would be to change the general plan land use designation from low density residential to commercial office. The community plan amendment would be to change the land use designation of the site from RD2 to LC, which is light commercial. And then a rezone is requested to change the zoning of the property from RD2 to LC. The applicant is applying for the proposed amendments in order to develop the site with a drive-through automobile wash facility. So to develop that intended use, the applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to allow a drive-through with no amplified sound within 75 feet of a residential zoning district, a special development permit to deviate from several development standards, which I will outline in the next slide and talk a little bit in more detail when I get to the exhibits, and a design review to determine substantial compliance with the design guidelines. So again, this is just an overview, but the special development permit request is to allow the proposed project to deviate from a couple of different car wash development standards. So that includes exit screening, dryer location, tunnel exit orientation, some landscaping requirements, which is the width of the landscape planter between the drive-through and the right-of-way, the width of the end aisle planters in a parking row, and then they are also requesting a deviation to some screening requirements for parking and queuing lanes, as well as the side street yard setback. So again, this is just an overview. I'll be pointing out the deviations with the specific details when I go through the project exhibit, so there's a little bit more of a visual for you all to follow. So for this project, an initial study and mitigated negative declaration was prepared pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act. It was released for public review on July 30th. The environmental analysis discussed impacts to land use, air quality, noise, water quality, biological resources, and greenhouse gas emissions. In regards to noise and biological resources, the ISM&D did conclude that the project would result in a less than significant impact with the implementation of mitigation measures. So we have prepared a mitigation monitoring and reporting program that is included in the report package, and I'll be touching on some of those noise mitigations later on in the presentation as well. Here is the site plan. The drive-through automobile wash facility would consist of a 2,138 square foot car wash building. The car wash building is proposed to run parallel to Garfield Avenue, with the entrance of the car wash tunnel facing southwest and the exit of the car wash tunnel facing northeast. So just to kind of give you an idea of the on-site circulation is that cars would enter in off of Werner Avenue, make a right, wrap around the building, and enter in the car wash entrance, which is facing the daycare facility, travel through to the exit, which is facing the place of worship, and then either exit or take another right and enter in and use the vacuum stalls. So there are 7 vacuum stalls proposed, and as well as an employee parking stall. There's also vacuum equipment, trash enclosure, and accessible restroom facilities, and that is all to the east of the proposed building. And the facility's hours of operations are proposed and conditioned to be 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. On this slide, I do want to point out 2 of the 7 deviations requested, the first being the car wash tunnel exit orientation. So the standard reads, car wash tunnel exits shall be situated so that they do not face toward any nearby residential zones. So as proposed, the car wash tunnel faces the RD2 zoning district across Werner Avenue, which also holds the existing place of worship. The second deviation is the side street yard setback. The minimum side street yard setback is 50 feet, and as proposed, the building would be set back a minimum of 30 feet from Garfield Avenue. The proposed project is also conditioned to install frontage improvements on both Garfield Avenue and Werner Avenue. So that would consist of curb, gutter, sidewalk, and landscaping. And then the last thing I wanted to mention on the site plan is the applicant is proposing grading improvements for noise mitigation. So for visual assistance, we do have some cross sections coming up in later slides, but in general, the grading would result in the car wash building at a lower elevation than the adjacent daycare facility and a lower elevation than Garfield Avenue. So a little hard to tell from plan view, but keep that in mind as we go along the next slides, and we will have cross sections to show that. Here is the landscape plan. As you can see, there is perimeter and parking lot landscaping proposed. 4 deviations, I do want to point out the next 3. So the third deviation is the landscape planter between the drive-through and the right-of-way. So the requirement is 25 feet, and the applicant is proposing 10 feet between the drive-through lane and public right-of-way. The fourth deviation is for end island planters. So the requirement is that planters of at least 8 feet in width shall be installed at the end of every parking row. The planter proposed just east of the trash enclosure is proposed to be 5.5 feet wide, so deviating from that 8 feet. And then the fifth deviation is for screening between queuing and residential zones. So it reads, all customer idling and queuing areas shall be separated from nearby residential zones with on or off-site intervening structures or other solid shielding features in addition to any required property line walls. So the project as proposed does not provide any additional shielding features other than the required masonry wall or CMU wall adjacent to the RD2 property. As you will see in the cross sections, because of the grading improvements, the wall does sit higher than the car wash building. So you'll see that the different screening for this particular project. Here's the floor plan. The building includes an approximately 550 square foot equipment room and a 1,350 square foot car wash bay or tunnel. The car wash dryers are proposed to be 2 feet from the exit, which is the sixth deviation, as the zoning code states tunnels shall be designed so that dryers are located at least 10 feet from the exits. And the last and seventh deviation is the car wash tunnel exit screening. So car wash tunnel exits shall be designed with solid screening features extending from the ceiling and walls of the car wash tunnel so that the dryers are blocked from view, standing directly in front of the exit. So as proposed, the project does not provide that screening for the dryers. Here are the colored elevations, the use of stone and other materials. And now that we've gone through the kind of plan views, the layout and facility components, I do want to touch back on the grading information that I provided earlier. So again, the parcel currently slopes from the south west corner near Garfield to the east corner of Werner Avenue. The applicant is proposing these grading improvements for noise mitigation, and the finished floor of the car wash building will be 7 feet lower than the adjacent daycare and 2 feet lower than Garfield Avenue. So starting with the 7 feet lower from the daycare, that's going to be this top section. So this over here on the far left is the daycare building. You'll see this kind of darker line here is going to be that 8-foot wall, and then 8 feet of landscaping, and then you see it kind of drops down there where there will be a retaining wall, and then it continues on to have the car wash facility. So the finished floors do end up being 7 feet lower than the adjacent daycare. And then the bottom cross section here shows Garfield Avenue over here on the far left. The public street improvements, landscaping, and then it does drop down 2 feet to where the driving queuing lanes are. Okay. The Carmichael Old Foothill Farms Community Planning Advisory Council met on June 8th of 2022 and recommends the board, who is the final hearing body for this project, approve the requested entitlements. At that meeting, we did not have any members of the public present, and no verbal or written comments were received. Following that meeting, an email correspondence was received on September 22nd of 2022 from the Werner Oaks Townhouse Homeowners Association, which represents the 40-unit townhome complex at the south end of Werner Oaks Court, which is approximately 0.3 miles south of the project site. So I believe they are right outside the normal mailing radius for the project. The HOA representative who sent the email indicated that the HOA held a meeting on September 15th and voted unanimously to oppose the proposed project. The opposition was due to the increase in traffic activity, as well as opposition to rezoning of the residential designated land to commercial. We have provided the email correspondence as well as the HOA meeting minutes in the packet, and then we also added the HOA members who wanted to be noticed of this hearing to the mailing list, so they were noticed for this hearing as well. The Design Review Advisory Committee met on June 23rd, 2022 to review the project. The DRAC did express concerns about the number of requested deviations to make the project work on the half-acre site. They also commented on potential noise and traffic impacts to the existing residential development in the area. There was further discussion about the technical studies that were prepared for the project, as well as the project design. And after that deliberation and discussion, the DRAC did ultimately recommend that the board find the project in substantial compliance with the design guidelines. Besides the project being supported by the CPAC and found consistent with the design guidelines by the DRAC, the proposed project can ultimately be found consistent with the general plan, community plan, and zoning code as conditioned. Although the proposed project would introduce commercially designated property to the east side of Garfield Avenue, where there currently is no commercially designated property, the site has been largely vacant for at least 2 decades, which could demonstrate that the location may not support investment of low-density residential development. The project is compatible with surrounding zoning and land uses, again, as conditioned. Surrounding land uses, except for the vacant residential property to the southeast, are predominantly non-residential development, and the proposed design does meet the minimum buffering requirements from adjacent residentially zoned parcels. There are no significant environmental concerns with the implementation of mitigation measures. And although the RD2 zoning district is a residential zoning district, the light commercial zoning district does allow for higher density residential uses. So since there is potential for a residential development in the proposed zoning district, the general plan amendment and rezone would not result in the downzoning of a parcel of land where housing is allowed, and does not result in a less intensive housing density allowed by right. Therefore, the project does not conflict with the provisions outlined in Senate Bill 330 or the Housing Crisis Act of 2019. For those reasons, staff is recommending approval of this entitlement package with the attached findings and conditions, which I do want to highlight just a couple of key conditions for the Planning Commission. The first, just reiterating that they will have limited hours of operation from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. That is condition 6. Condition 9 requires 10 feet of sound absorbing material maintained on each side of the dryers with a minimum NRC of 1.0. NRC is noise reduction coefficient. So at 1 NRC, 100% of the sound is being absorbed by the acoustic product and no sound is being reflected back into the room. Conditions 10, 14, and 15 really cover kind of ongoing assurance that the car wash is not going to exceed noise standards and will not be in violation of the county noise ordinance. So condition 10 is basically an ongoing measure to see if complaints are received or if there's verification of noncompliance by our environmental management department. We can then have the property owner do another acoustical analysis, come up with recommendations, physical or operational measures to bring them back into compliance. So that's something that's ongoing and that we can enforce at any time. Conditions 14 talks about different design features that were brought up in the noise assessment prepared for the project and requires those features to be incorporated into the construction documents and specifications. Any deviations to those would need to be, any deviations from those features, they would need to demonstrate that any changes to those or any deviations would have equivalent or better noise attenuation through preparation of another noise analysis. And then lastly, condition 15, this again requires an acoustical analysis before they begin operation, so before they're issued their certificate of occupancy. So again, staff is recommending approval of this entitlement package with the attached findings and conditions. The recommended action for the Planning Commission is to approve Resolution 1, recommending the board approve the amendment to the general plan land use designation of the project site from low-density residential to commercial office. And then staff also recommends the Planning Commission make the following recommendations to the board. Determine the environmental analysis prepared pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act is adequate and complete. Adopt the mitigation monitoring and reporting program. Approve a resolution authorizing an amendment to the Carmichael Community Plan from RD2 to LC. Approve an ordinance authorizing a rezone from RD2 to LC. Approve the use permit, the special development permit, and find the project in substantial compliance with the design guidelines, all subject to findings and conditions. With that, I will conclude staff's presentations, and we have the applicant team here in attendance as well.
Thank you, Ms. Gutierrez. Questions for staff this evening?
Just one quick question, Ms. Gutierrez. Thank you for a very eloquent and thoughtful presentation. You mentioned that there's no current commercial use east of Garfield, but a little bit north of that is like a restaurant, right?
Yeah, so there's some, so it's...
Like by Quiznos and the original Pizza
Yeah,
House?
so farther up Garfield, there is some commercial development up here, but it is not designated as commercial on the general plan. It's low-density residential pretty much all throughout, but the actual community plan and zoning is like commercial. But it is just north of the, is that where you're talking about?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And it seems like that those buildings have been there for some time.
Yes.
So it'd be safe to assume that the neighbors have already seen maybe that level of traffic with those restaurants, especially if the theaters are at full capacity. Okay, thank you.
Other questions for staff this evening?
Can you just kind of, you mentioned it, but quickly restate, why isn't there ingress off of Garfield?
So the parcel map that created the lot back in 1978 actually has no ingress. It established that no ingress or egress line along the property line of Garfield Avenue. So in order to remove that, they would probably need to amend or do their own tentative map, and the abandonment of that no ingress egress would need to be something that the board approves as well. So yeah, old parcel map.
Yeah, so in your opinion, would an ingress on Garfield have made this project perhaps easier to site and locate?
Definitely would want to make sure we would have weigh-in from the Department of Transportation. I know they don't like to have additional driveways super close to an intersection, so it definitely would need to be on the farther side of the I don't know which.
Closer to the preschool.
Closer to the daycare center, yeah. But Garfield is, I believe, kind of a busier street. There probably would need to be some additional, we would need to look at additional site circulation. Maybe could enter in there, but there wouldn't be any like left onto Garfield, so it would require people to go right. So I think there could have been a lot more discussion about that for sure.
And is there going to be a left permitted out of the site onto Werner?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and we did actually talk about this earlier today, but you can also see that Werner does loop back around to Garfield Avenue. So if, traffic did, for example, on a Sunday, if the place of worship was very busy, you couldn't make a left, you could make a right, which would make them go through the residential neighborhood, but it would push them back out onto Garfield.
So the place of worship has been noticed. Have we spoken with them at all?
I have not received any comments from them, no.
Did we just drop a postcard in the mail, or have we reached out to them at all on the project?
Mailed notices were sent.
Mailed notices were sent, okay.
For these types of projects, sorry, Chair, quick question. Do we also put a development pending sign?
A sign, yes.
So
It was posted with
it
a
was
sign,
posted with a
yes.
sign, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Corona Sabagnino. Go ahead.
It's okay.
So the same question for the daycare. Did we receive any feedback from them at all? No. Okay. I was just curious of the timings. The time 8 p.m. to 8 or 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
I have not received any comments. I have also not been the only planner with this project, so there may have been some initial conversations very early on. But since we've noticed for the environmental document and for this meeting, I have not received any comments.
Okay. And then you talked about that there's no net loss analysis because this parcel was not included in the housing element?
Correct.
Is that what is the reason why was it not included in there?
I'm not sure why it wasn't included on the housing inventory. I'm going to guess because it's RD2 zoned and because of the size of it, probably eliminated that opportunity. Yeah, I don't know, Todd, if you have anything else.
Commissioner Sabignano, Todd Smith, Planning Director. The site is only just over half an acre. It would be too small to meet HCD's requirements to include on the vacant land inventory. And the density is too low as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
At this time, I'd like to invite the applicant up, and we can get everybody sworn in at once that may be answering questions.
Good.
If you wish to address the commission, please stand and be sworn. Please raise your right hand, and the appropriate response is I do. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give this board is truth? So help you God. If you do not swear, do you so affirm?
I do.
Thank you. And if you make comments, please just announce your name for the record. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Mr. Chairman, my name is Dan Cucci. I'm with the law firm of Abdis and Cucci. We represent the applicants for this project. First, I would be remiss if I didn't thank staff for diligently working on this. My clients have spent several iterations trying to find the best version of this project that meets as many requirements as possible under the limitations of the site. I think in the end, this is a quality product bringing something that my clients clearly have spent a lot of time and money and understand that the economic conditions are appropriate for this type of use at this location. We're here to answer any questions you have, particularly on some of the detailed questions you have. I think my client might be able to speak to those a little bit better than perhaps I on the details. But if you have any particular questions, we're here for you.
I'll kick us off with an oak tree question because the slide is up here. The oak tree that's sitting there to the kind of southwest of the property, and the environmental impact report says it's going to be removed, but it's actually not even on the site. And I was curious if you guys could address why that oak tree would be removed.
Good evening, Chair. Julie Newton, Environmental Coordinator with Planning. The tree that you're seeing on that image there that's on the neighboring property is actually not proposed for removal. There are a handful of oak trees that would need to be removed that are along the property line that are within the project boundary. So primarily for where the wall would be installed, but there are no trees proposed for removal that are on the neighboring properties.
What is the environmental impact report have tree 20? Can we pull that up and take a look? Maybe I'm misunderstanding, but it looks to me to be off the property. It's really the only big tree.
So there's, looking at the tree diagram here, there are two trees that are located next to each other, trees 20 and 21. Tree 21 is actually on the neighboring property. That's the large tree that you're seeing that is 50 inches in diameter. And that tree, so that tree may be proposed for removal due to encroachment. So conservatively, it looks like the document assumed that If it needed to be removed, that tree was included in our mitigation measure for removal due to the amount of encroachment that would incur into the drip line. During final design and plans, if that tree is determined to not need to be removed with the encroachment, then they would not be responsible for mitigating for that tree.
Sounds good. So now the question is in you guys' court, as far as grading on that side of the site, I know you guys are planning on grading into the hillside for noise attenuation. Is that possible while also not taking out this large oak tree that's on the neighboring property?
Well, I'll have my client speak a little bit deeper, but I can tell you just from the perspective of working with a lot of clients, the last thing you want to do is try to force a neighboring property to have to deal with their tree. I think, any developer is going to want to do anything and everything they can to avoid that situation. It just creates all kinds of issues and questions, and that you just, if you can avoid it, you're going to try to do that. I think, a lot of times environmental documents do try to assume the worst case scenario because that's what you do in an environmental document. That does not mean that will happen, and nor do we desire it to happen. But let Tony speak a little bit more about the specifics.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Tony Singh, 250 West Main Street, Woodland. So as we move forward on the project, so we'll be working again with the Planning and Environmental Review Department, and the MMRP conditions will be reviewed, and again we'll be hiring an arborist who will work closely with the PER, Department of PER, and then whatever the decision comes, we will comply with that.
So we don't know at this point whether because really you guys are grading down the site for noise attenuation. Is that fair to say?
For grading, our civil engineer is here, so probably he will better answer.
I'm Harsiv Singh, same 250 West Main Street, Woodland. So a lot of the grading is done to comply with the ADA requirements. That's why we see the switchback ramps. So the whole site is not elevated to meet that, whereas what we had to meet was put the finished floor slightly lower because of switchback ramps, and then also because of noise requirements. So we have a step down. So there were two reasons for having that steps there.
Okay. Other questions for the applicant team this evening? Have you guys reached out to the church or the place of worship? I'm not sure what it is. Place of worship is being referred to the east, or to the preschool to the west, and spoken with them about noise concerns?
I can quickly speak to the preschool. It's actually been closed for a number of years now, so it's not actually in operation. That might be one reason why you haven't heard anything from them. So.
Fair enough.
We did not reach the church management directly, but we did went through CPAC, and as it is mentioned, there is a public hearing notice posted on the site, and so far we haven't heard anything negative about the project.
Can you talk a little bit more about the length of the building and what prevents it? Can you kind of go through the exceptions, particularly related to noise? Are they just not technically feasible? The length of the building?
Yes. For the automatic car wash projects, so our tunnel length is 75 feet, which is the minimum required, because tunnels go up to 100 feet, 120 feet. So that was our limitation. And in regards to exit through the Garfield Avenue, our first concept was initiated with that thought, we will be exiting through the Garfield. But then we worked with DOT, and DOT didn't allow us to interrupt the flow on the Garfield. And because Garfield and Warner are signalized intersection, so any traffic coming into the site, that will be controlled with the signals. And in regards to the another issue was, if we exit on the Garfield, the building has to be moved towards south, next to the residential zoned parcel, although it is vacant. And in regards to, so because the tunnel length is limited, so that's the reason the dryers are only 2 feet away from the exit. But at the same time, the project is about 2 feet higher than the Warner Avenue center line, and the church goes further down. The church parking is further down. So plus with the noise study, we will be mitigating the extra noise generated out of those dryers. So that's why our project complied with the initial study requirements. And I mean, whatever was required by the staff, we worked for like nearly about 6 years with different departments. And it has been a smooth journey, and we are again thankful to the staff for working with us. And today we have come to this point after satisfying all those standards. And no doubt we are requesting special development permits, which seems like a lot, but I mean, we are trying to mitigate. Similarly, like the drive-through, it's not meeting the 25 feet distance from the right-of-way, but at the same time, drive-through is about 4 to 5 feet lower than the adjacent Garfield Avenue sidewalks. So the cars will be barely visible from the Garfield.
And I see a vacant site to the south, so I just have to ask. We're trying to fit all these things on this small site here. Did you look at the site to the south of this, or try to purchase that site to be able to fit this project better?
Mr. Mann is the owner.
I'm the owner of the property.
Come on up to the podium. We'll get you sworn in here.
Yes, my name is Amarjit Man. I'm the owner of parcel.
Okay, we'll get you sworn in here.
Please raise your right hand, and the appropriate response is I do. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give this board is the truth, so help you God? If you do not swear, do you so affirm?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Amarjit Man. I'm owner of the parcel. But my next door, they are 4 years shut down. One time, they like 4 years ago, he put them on sale. I go look inside. I try to make a deal. They asking that time too much money. Now 4 years, there's nothing there. So all over is actually clear, nothing. They have already signed their development sign, so nobody reaction.
I'm trying to understand it. There's a development sign to the south of this?
Yeah, this is right in the corner in Garfield and Warner Avenue.
So a residential development that's to the south of the site?
This is the car development, commercial.
But what about the parcel to the southeast of this? Do we know anything? Is the vacant parcel that's there?
That's right here. The one that's right here.
See, right there we sign here. No.
It's okay if not. I just have to ask because we're trying to squeeze everything on this parcel here. So if you say, hey, I've talked to those landowners or there's a pending development there or something, then that would play into my decision making.
No development there.
Okay. Other questions for the applicant team this evening? Okay. Thank you, guys. At this time, we'll move on to public comment.
We did not receive any speaker request forms for this item.
Thank you. We'll close public comment and move to deliberation. And I can kick us off. I guess I understand the need for this there, and also the difficulty of working with a small site. But there is a lot of exceptions that are being asked for, and so that's what I'm struggling with. Is like, well, are we kind of just trying to fit a square peg into a round hole here? And have we really done all the work that we need to? And it does bother me a little bit that we don't have any communication with the neighbor to the east, which is probably the likely impacted neighbor if we were to deviate from these standards. So that's where I'm at on the project. And I also don't love that we may be, because of the design of the project, we may be impacting a large oak tree that's off-site by cutting into the hillside to solve the fact that the site's not big enough to hold it. So that's where I'm at on it.
I can chime in, Chair. I drove by kind of generally that area, and I don't believe there's an oversaturation of car washes in that exit. If you were to go one exit in Madison, it's a whole completely different story. There's like 6 car washes there, but at Full Hill Farms, I think the nearest is like 2 miles away. I think there's a Bubble Bee hand touchless. So I do understand your concern where the potential noise going to the east. However, I did look at the New Hope Christian Fellowship schedule, and they seem to be closed more days of the week than they're open. And so I think I'm looking at the deviations, and I'm really trying to balance, will there be like a significant public health impact if, there's no dryer sheet cover or there's no certain 25-foot landscape requirements. And at this point, I'm just not seeing that much of a concern, I guess, where the deviations are. It is quite a number of deviations, though. I would say there's probably at least 10 here. But for the biggest one that I'm, I guess, kind of seeing is just the tunnel exits situating and pointing to the parking lot of the church. But aside from that, it seems like they've tried to do their due diligence of making it to be economically feasible, given the site constraints. And with that, I'd be happy to move the staff recommendation, but I'm happy to continue discussions as well.
We have a motion for staff recommendation. Open to.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for staff recommendation. Would anybody else like to weigh in before we call for a vote?
I guess I'll, thank you, Chair. I guess this is maybe a bit of a question for staff, or maybe just kind of comment generally. I think I want to first recognize the applicant and clearly how much work they've done to put all these pieces together to make this fit. It is a good number of exceptions, and I do have some concerns around the oak tree that's potentially going to be compromised that is not on the property, recognizing that I don't think that it is their intent to get rid of that. However, it's obviously a risk. I think my bigger concerns, with the drive-through car washes as a whole is I wonder how much of an impact that we're going to have subsequently down the road that we really can't even assess because of the type of use that it is, right? This is 100% vehicle centric. It is noisy. And I guess for me, the location of a car wash, I think, is potentially determinative of kind of really what happens in and around that use once it's in place. And maybe for that reason, it's like almost, maybe the car wash is better as like the last piece that goes in on a site to see if it fits. Otherwise, I think we're potentially making decisions that are, what are going to be the surrounding uses around it. I mean, you're not putting a coffee shop next to the car wash because they are loud. I do want to acknowledge that they have the grading, I think, is hopefully going to be the mitigating factor in this. I will go ahead and be supporting of the project tonight, but I think as a whole, it would just be nice if there was some way to kind of look at these car washes in a more global kind of context of like, what are those uses that are going to be impacted subsequent to its development?
Sounds good. I'll make one last comment. This is going to the board. Anyway, I think it would be nice to have that answer on the oak tree that's off-site before it gets to the Board of Supervisors. So that's clear. And I think that's it. Just making sure it's, it's not being impacted by the drive to the sound attenuation, right? I just want to make sure we're not having extra impacts with the design of the project. So I think you guys understand. Sorry, just getting over something. I think you guys understand my concerns there. So will you please call the roll?
And the motion carries with Chairperson Raythel voting no.
All right, that concludes item number 2, and please call item number 3.
Item number 3, this is a general plan amendment, community plan amendment for the Vineyard Community Plan Amendment for Cordova, West Jackson Highway Master Plan, Affordable Housing Strategies, Development Agreements, Public Facilities Financing Plan, Urban Services Plan, Water Supply Master Plan, and Water Supply Assessments. This property is located east of South Watt Avenue, north of Elder Creek Road, south of Kiefer Boulevard, and west of Excelsior Road in the Vineyard and Cordova communities. The environmental document is an environmental impact report, and the purpose of this hearing is to introduce the West Jackson Highway Master Plan, receive oral comments on the draft environmental impact report, and to recognize the end of the public review period.
All right. Hello again, Commissioners. Emma Carrico, Associate Planner and Project Manager for the West Jackson Highway Master Plan Project. My presentation is a little moot now. I'm got it all, I think. But this project has a long history, so some of you may be familiar with it. But I recognize that we also have some newer commissioners who may not be familiar. So I am going to provide a basic overview and some background information before I get to the purpose of today's hearing, which is to receive oral comments on the draft environmental impact report and to close the 45-day public comment period. The plan area, shown here in blue, encompasses 484 parcels, totaling approximately 5,913 acres, and is generally bounded by Jackson Highway, Kiefer Boulevard, and Gady Road to the north, Elder Creek Road and Florin Road to the south, the City of Sacramento to the west, and Excelsior Road to the east. The predominant existing use is surface mining, but the plan area also contains some agricultural, industrial, and rural residential uses. Significant natural resources within the plan area include Elder Creek and Morrison Creek, both of which are perennial waterways. Parcels within the plan area are currently zoned agricultural, industrial, and some small amounts of agricultural, residential, commercial, and public, quasi-public. Surrounding land uses include the Rosemont community, Mather Airport, and City of Rancho Cordova to the north, the Florin Vineyard Community Plan to the south, the Jackson Township and Newbridge specific plans to the east, and the City of Sacramento to the west. The Board of Supervisors initiated the master plan process for the project on April 17th, 2012. On June 27th, 2013, the applicants submitted a formal application. Over the past decade, the applicants have been coordinating with the county and independent partner agencies to prepare the master plan, land use plan, and technical studies needed to prepare a draft environmental impact report. If adopted, the master plan, along with other supporting entitlements, would establish a framework and policies for development within the plan area, including plans for infrastructure and public services and land use designations for each parcel as shown here on the proposed land use plan. The primary vision for the master plan is to transition the plan area from the existing patchwork of mining, industrial, and rural residential properties into a developed community with urban services. In order to accomplish this, the applicants are requesting general plan amendments to the land use diagram, transportation diagram, and active transportation plan, community plan amendments to the Vineyard and Cordova community plans, adoption of the master plan, 2 affordable housing strategies, 2 development agreements, a public facilities financing plan, and an urban services plan, an amendment to the Zone 40 Water Supply Master Plan, and approval of 2 water supply assessments, 1 for each of the 2 water providers in the plan area. At build-out, the project will allow for 16,484 residential dwelling units, 11.5 million square feet of commercial and employment uses, 2 million square feet of industrial space, 2,100 acres of parks and open space, and 6 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and 1 high school. In order to assess the potential impacts of the proposed project, a draft environmental impact report, or DEIR, was prepared. The report assessed 18 different resource categories as listed here and found that the project would result in significant and unavoidable impacts to some aspects of aesthetics, agricultural, air quality, cultural, noise, and transportation resources. Impacts in the other 12 categories were found to be less than significant or less than significant with mitigation. The DEIR was published on July 25th, 2024, initiating the 45-day public review period. As of close of business today, the county has received 15 comment letters, mostly from state and local agencies, as well as a few from members of the public. The analysis presented in the draft EIR will be used to prepare the final EIR, which will include responses to all comments received. Tonight, Planning and Environmental Review staff recommends the Planning Commission acknowledge the end of the public comment period for the draft EIR and direct staff to prepare the final EIR. However, there are several more steps in the entitlement process for this project. After the close of the DEIR public comment period, staff will present the project to the Vineyard and Cordova Community Planning Advisory Councils so that each council may make a recommendation of approval or denial to the board. Once the final EIR is published and the project materials are finalized, staff will return to the Planning Commission for another public hearing to provide a more in-depth presentation on the project as a whole and to receive the Planning Commission's recommendation of approval or denial. The final decision authority for the project is the Board of Supervisors, who will also hold a public hearing to consider the project and vote to approve or deny it. That concludes my presentation. Staff is happy to take any questions. The applicants are here and also happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carrico. Questions for staff this evening? All right, quick and easy. Thank you. And the applicant's here this evening, or?
They don't have anything additional, but if you have questions.
Perfect. Does anyone have questions for the applicant this evening? All right, that concludes that. We're going to go ahead and open up public comment. I've got one request to speak so far. Roxanne Fuentes, if you want to come on up.
Hi, my name is Roxanne Fuentes, and I'm opposed to this project. This undeveloped land is most of the last open space in eastern Sacramento County not already slated for development. Prime farmland of statewide importance, and farmland of local importance will be lost if this project goes forward. Permanent agricultural land will be lost to future generations. Under the no project alternative, the grasslands, agricultural habitat, and trees would be retained in the plan area that support special status plant and wildlife species known to occur in the area. The golden eagle has been documented in the plan area. The threatened giant garter snake occurs in the plan area. Tricolored blackbird, which was emergency listed as an endangered species, has one of the smallest ranges in North America, and this bird has nesting colonies in the plan area. The white-tailed kite is a fully protected species which occurs in the plan area. The burrowing owl, which is in decline due to habitat destruction, occurs in the plan area. And the American badger, a species of special concern, lives in the plan area. The western pond turtle, western spadefoot toad, both species of special concern occur in the plan area. Threatened vernal pool fairy shrimp, endangered vernal pool tadpole shrimp, mid-valley fairy shrimp, and Linduriella all occur in vernal pools in the plan area. The Sanford's arrowhead is a rare plant species documented in the plan area. Legionnaire is a special status plant, and Boggs Lake hedgesup is an endangered plant found in vernal pools, edges of lakes, and ponds in the plant area. There are many other species that occur in the plant area which are endangered and threatened. All these plants, birds, and animals will be destroyed if the project moves forward. The plant area contains vernal pools, seasonal wetlands, grasslands, riparian woodlands, marshes, ponds, and streams. Regarding Mayfair Airport versus development, Sacramento County's Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan and General Plan prohibits residential development inside the community noise equivalent level 60 dB contour. An update to this plan would allow residential development within the 60 to 65 dB contour. It would be a mistake to allow residential development so close to the airport and runways. Remember Farrell's Ice Cream Parlor tragedy. Also, having housing development so close to the airport may preclude staging air shows in the future. Widening Jackson Road to 6 lanes would encroach upon people's property and cause the loss of wetlands. Under the no project alternative, there would be no loss of agricultural land, rural residential uses, and wildlife habitat. Under the no project alternative, the visual aesthetics of the area would be retained and historic and tribal cultural resources would not be disturbed. There would be less impact on transportation under the no project alternative, as well as less air, noise, and light pollution. And finally, the no project alternative would not impact Mayfair Airport activities, including air shows. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fuentes. We appreciate your comments this evening. Anyone else that would like to address the commission this evening? All right, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Any deliberation this evening or comments? I'd be happy to move the staff recommendation to acknowledge the end of the...
Just a couple of quick questions.
Sure.
So we go with a DEIR right now, and then looking at this, we go to CPAC recommendations, and then a final EIR. That's when is the staff hoping to have the same, if not similar, robust engagement with the community members and neighborhoods? I saw the packet of all of the things received, different departments, Parks and Rec districts, substance control. I mean, there's a wide gamut. And then I'm assuming that the project hasn't shifted since the draft EIR, but should there be any changes, I guess, with policies or law? I'm not saying that the SB 743 would, but there's a lot of things about infill development and urban sprawl. Would that be, again, reconsidered? And if policies may have shifted or changed since this DEIR, the final EIR preparation would still be able to encompass any of those new laws that the governor might be signing in the next week or so.
So, Todd Smith, Planning Director, lots of good questions there, Commissioner Borja. I'll try to go in order, and hopefully I'll capture all of them. The first one, it sounded like you were asking about the next steps for the project relative to going back to CPACs for their recommendations and then coming back to the Planning Commission for a hearing on the merits of the project. Those things will happen. The reason for tonight's meeting, I think, is Emma Carrico pointed out, was simply to take oral comments on the draft DIR. And as she alluded to in her presentation, we also have a number of written comments already received, and we will be responding to those. Going back out to the Cordova and Vineyard CPACs for their recommendation on the project will happen in the coming months, as will obviously work on the conditions of approval, finalizing the final EIR. All those things are going to happen. We do obviously have an eye on what legislation is coming. Now switching gears to what's in the works right now. Obviously, we won't know until we see what's signed and put into law. We'll have to do that final analysis when that happens. As it relates to SB 743, I will note this project is subject to that, along with all the other projects that have gone through in the Jackson corridor. We have done the VMT analysis. It's included in the draft EIR, and I would note that the project performs exceptionally well in that regard from a VMT perspective.
Thank you, sir. If I may, just one quick follow-up. We did hear the public speaker comment about some of the species that would be impacted. I do see in Appendix F that there is a habitat conservation plan and minimization measures with perhaps with this plan, it's about 48 or 49 pages, would this plan be able to at least address some of the concerns about the specific species, habitat, or environmental impacts that may potentially go through with the vernal pools and the loss of open space?
Sure. Good evening, Commissioners. Julie Newton, Environmental Coordinator with County Planning. There is a great deal of analysis on biological resources in the draft EIR. I will note that this master plan is within the boundaries of the South Sacramento Habitat Conservation Plan. There was significant work that went into that plan that really looks at a regional conservation strategy. So under that plan, it does anticipate that this area of the county would develop at some point. And by participating in that conservation plan, there's a number of avoidance and minimization measures that account for mitigating species that may be on site. Ultimately, participation in that plan goes to the regional conservation strategy to protect species and habitats within the larger county area.
So if there may be some species that would be disturbed, whoever would be developing or participating in the plan can look at alternative measures. Sorry if I'm understanding this correctly, would look into alternative measures to either maintain or exceed the current, wildlife count that's currently available there, or participate in the larger county goal that says, okay, if there's other habitats where there's a no build and there happens to be the same range of species, that they can pay into protecting that, so that we would have an acceptable difference of.
So the strategy of the HCP is that as habitats or species may be disturbed, the mitigation strategy is that those development projects pay fees towards the South Sacramento Conservation Agency. That agency's goal is to further the goals of the HCP, which organizes a conservation strategy throughout the larger boundary. So this HCP encompasses the entire South County of Sacramento County, with the intention of targeting high-quality habitat areas for preservation and perpetuity. So in essence, if there's disturbance to existing habitat on this site, those mitigation fees then go to acquiring higher priority targeted areas for conservation elsewhere to provide linkages of habitat and further protection of those species.
Understood. Does that typically be like a 1-to-1 range? Like if we do like an enviro count and there's 1,000 burrowing owls, and then they pay in, there's a cost to disturbing the habitat of 1,000 burrowing owls. Would that fee then say that, look, we would pay into a conservation fund that would then hopefully protect another 1,000 burrowing owls?
It's the strategy is based on habitat types, not necessarily counts of species, but looking at the habitat type, whether that be vernal pools, riparian, valley grassland.
Understood. Thank you. And then just one last question. Sorry, I represent this area, so I'm just down the street from Vineyard, so I'll definitely be impacted, and I appreciate your guys' patience. Director Smith, I was just wondering, as far as like fee assessments go for any of the transportation improvements, are we just assuming that it would be kind of bifurcated parcel by parcel as development kind of begins, or do you anticipate that the master plan would essentially front load some of the traffic costs more of as a corridor basis, or like how are we would the North Vineyard be paying for things now, and then hopefully be reimbursed by the new development that's happening. We don't know when development might actually happen. It might be 10 to 20 years from now.
So good question, and I think you were, maybe jog your memory a little bit. I'm trying to remember if you were on the Vineyard CPAC at the time or you were at the Planning Commission, but this project is one of the 4 Jackson Highway Master Plans. So it is subject to the larger transportation mitigation strategy that our County Department of Transportation and all of the applicants work together to create, such that it's a cohesive approach that tries to respond more so to where development within an individual project is happening. And those funds, whether those transportation impact fees can be collected and focused on delivering projects that are proximate to where that development's occurring, rather than in various areas that are set up based on when certain development thresholds are hit, triggers, for lack of a better term. And so the entire corridor is planned with that structure in mind, so that regardless of where the development starts in the corridor, there is a funding mechanism and appropriate impact fees are collected such that either the county delivers those projects or the individual applicants might want to deliver them based on their individual needs and funding opportunities. That goes for really a comprehensive transportation network within the corridor. And there are some overlapping facilities that other plans like North Vineyard Station, Florin Vineyard Community Plan, for example, they also share in some of those responsibilities. And so it's a balancing act from a kind of a cash and accounting perspective that our Department of Transportation and our Special Districts unit are working to put in place for everybody in the Vineyard community.
All right, I've made a motion to go ahead and end the public comment period or staff recommendation and direct them to prepare the final EIR.
Second. Motion.
Yeah, I made the motion.
Oh, second then. Sorry.
Perfect. Any further comments this evening? All right, go ahead and vote.
And the motion carries by unanimous vote with those members present.
That moves us to the miscellaneous portion of our agenda this evening. Item number 4 is our planning director's report.
All right, just briefly tonight, we do have, looks like 3 items next meeting and perhaps 3 to 4 the following meeting after that. So as I usually do, I'm looking for an attendance poll. Hopefully everybody, or at least 4 of you, can make it.
That would be September 23rd, just.
Yes.
And then are we meeting on the, I think the 14th is a holiday, but that would be our normally scheduled meeting.
You would meet again at,
on the 7th.
I see.
We would normally meet on
the 7th. You're meeting on the 7th.
Got
just
it.
Because of the holiday.
Just because of the holiday, we're meeting on the 7th. And are we meeting on the 21st or the 28th?
The 21st.
Got it. So it's shifted for the whole month of October.
Yeah, just for let me see. November. The November is the 2nd. I'm sorry. November 4th would be your next meeting, and then you have one on the 18th, and that's also because Thanksgiving falls on that week, the last week of the month. So.
Can you run through those dates once more?
September 23rd is the next meeting. And then October 7th, October 21st, and November 4th, and then 18th.
No issues with me, so I'll be here.
I will be here. I'm glad I checked because now I need to update my calendar for the next 2 months.
And I can have Ms. Frazier send you reminders with all the dates for the next until the end of the year or into the beginning of the year, just so you can add those to your calendar. Make sure that, or ensure they're on your calendar.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, I always assume the 2nd and 4th, and that gets me in trouble. So thank you for that. Anything else on the planning director's report?
I will say, after the last meeting, I received an email, which I forwarded to all the commissioners, an opportunity, if you're interested, from the California County Planning Commissioners Association, which I, for whatever reason, got on their mailing list. It's a conference down in somewhere in Southern or Central California. For if you're interested in that training opportunity, please avail yourselves of it. Secondly, we are, and I'm in conversations with clerk of the board staff on this, is coming up with another potential training opportunity through the Urban Land Institute. We've had some conversations with them in roughly the last year, and I haven't got all the details yet, but when I do, I will be sure to share it.
Thank you.
Chair, may I just have one quick procedural question?
Sure.
I just, over the weekend, I couldn't figure out the answer, and I should have asked Council Burke, but why do we call it contested versus... did you? Oh, did you ask that too? Oh my goodness! No, I didn't talk. No, I didn't. It was. Yeah, it was just contested versus consent. Was that your question, sir?
You have to.
Yeah. Why do we call it contested and non-contested?
Yeah. Is that just more of a terminology?
Back to when we first started doing that, to try to streamline the hearing process and get through items faster. Initially, we thought, yeah, we'll call it consent, but then we thought about it, and for the Board of Supervisors to put a bunch of contractual and funding items on consent, that's one thing. But for land use entitlement hearings, you've got to allow an opportunity for public comment above and beyond just the Brown Act.
Got it.
There's a due process requirement for that. So if we were to put items on consent and just you approve 3 items in one vote, and you didn't give someone a chance to speak out as a neighbor or whatever, then you violated their due process rights. So that's why we decided not to call it consent, and to kind of, we always have the initial statement of, do you want a presentation?
Mm-hmm.
Let's make sure there's no one here that wants to talk. That's why.
Got it. Understood. Thank you. Thank you for educating me, sir.
We have
That was it.
rules of procedure too that you should take a look at, because they go through how the different items are handled, which we can, I'm sure, council or our director can send to you, because it's kind of my short Bible that I go by, for running the meeting. So
Understood. I need a refresher. Thank you. Look forward to that ULI refresher with the training, but thank you for the explanation, sir.
All right. Any generic public comment this evening? Item number 6.
We did not receive any speaker requests.
Perfect. We'll go ahead and adjourn at 7:06. Have a good night, everybody.